Hello and welcome to Heretics to Hegemony, where the revolution will be televised. I am your host Aleph, joined with my co-host Nasty and Jeremiah. And without a further ado, we're gonna get on top of it because there's a whole lot to talk about. And the talk of town, obviously, is, as you may know, the most pressing thing that's happening is the release of files. Not of Jeffrey Epstein, but of Martin Luther King Jr., JFK, Robert F. Kennedy, anyone but this fellow. And I wanted to ask you all, why is that? What is going on in this particular case when it comes to Epstein, when it comes to the files, when it comes to Trump and the whole rest of it? And I have a lot of questions, but I wanted to start by asking, how do you all see this as an overall playing out in the American political system, news cycle, mental psyche of the people? So, all yours.
Well, I will start off by saying I'll jump in what the most important aspect of this is the mental psyche, and it's the mental psyche of the United States. It's the zeitgeist of the United States. This is not the Epstein issue is not an issue of right versus left, Democrat versus Republican, lib versus conservative. It is an issue of elite versus non-elite. And that's why it is resonating with so many people across America, and that's why it resonated with so many people on the campaign trail as well, right? If we go back 2, 3 years, Trump was launching this stuff a lot. I mean, he was really, you got to be careful if you've been close to Epstein. You got to be careful if you've been close to Epstein. So using it as a political tool at the time, but when the time actually comes for the truth to actually come out, which I don't think it ever will. I honestly don't think we will ever see anything. But that is why people are not letting it go, and that's also the reason that we're starting to see some some unraveling even within MAGA. Not just to say the Republican Party, but even within MAGA, where people are starting to say, okay, like, this is what you campaigned on, this is what you promised on, and this is not an issue of libs versus conservatives. This is an issue of elite people that are potentially fucking kids and getting away with it, and yet I fucking have to go and pay my parking ticket, or my this or my that, or if I get caught with weed, I go to jail, or so it's not a matter of it is a matter of, it's also a matter of class, right? Because when we're talking about the elite, I mean, we all know if you've got enough money, you can lawyer the fuck up and get away with anything, right? But we all like to think that there's no one above the law. Well, now it's time to actually prove that no one is above the law, but we'll see.
Yeah, but they are above the law because they own the law, because we've allowed this country to let capitalism and the financial markets and the extremely wealthy actually run. Like, none of this makes any sense to me in the first place, how he got elected by the people who elected him, because he's using these tropes, Republican versus Democrat, this versus that. In the end, he was born into extreme wealth. His friends and his closest allies are all extremely wealthy. And we've allowed money to run our politics for so long. His election just really is the icing or the cherry on top of the cake. It's been here so long. And these people have been running. I mean, we talk about inflation. We talk about these companies. These shareholders are making billions of dollars. And they always want more. And they always expect efficiency to get greater, which either involves overworking and underpaying, or automation, which gets unemployment. And so all of this is a factor. Everybody else is worked to death and distracted, and they care more about these Epstein's extremely exciting because it's made for a documentary, right? But no one actually really feels the impact of the facts, or we would actually be, where Trump wouldn't have gotten elected in the first place, because the man's been wealthy his whole life. He hasn't worked hard for a damn thing. He's lost more money than he's ever made. And everything he says is just so he can get his picture on the TV screen. That's what he is as a president. He's a glory hound. And if anybody thinks he wasn't friends with Epstein and probably didn't fiddle with little kids, they haven't been paying attention.
And just for those who are outside the US or might not know what we mean by elite, and correct me if I'm wrong, the elite is a very small group of people in the United States that have extreme wealth or extreme access to power, to influence, and they don't live amongst us. Many people don't know. They have their own neighborhoods, they have their own transportation, they don't use even normal cars, and they have extreme, and it's not a conspiracy to say they elite in the United States, and I'm sure in many parts of the world it works the same way, that they conspire to do things together. They don't have to. Their interests align, their hobbies are aligning. They all go to golf courses, and after a golf course they might go and get a massage from someone who just happened to be 12. But other than that, they extremely wealthy, and they are treated when it comes to law completely differently. When I came to States early on, my cousin is a lawyer in the US, and this is like 10, 12 years ago. And she showed me another lawyer that had a talk and said, in the United States, the country that everybody's equal before the law, you will have such a better time if you are guilty but wealthy than innocent but poor. And that is what we mean by the elite. Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, and the other important factor there is that when we start getting to the elite, to the super wealthy, and we can actually even add in the next category down, which is just the still ungodly wealthy people who run most of these corporations. But that whole tier of people, you think the only home they own is in America? They own homes all over the world. They're not Americans in the sense of giving a damn about other Americans. And as you said, not only do they live in their own neighborhoods, they live in their own islands. They have their own compounds. They're prepared for the end times. They're waiting for the zombie apocalypse of the poor to come at them. And that's the thing, is they're not, it's not a conspiracy in the sense of like some sort of, I don't know. It's not as underground as everybody. It's just no one pays attention. No one pays attention to how these people are completely separate from us, and how they don't mind squeezing and squeezing and squeezing, because they don't break bread with the people that actually make their products.
That's very true.
Okay, it's also, it's funny that you say that. You talk about how they don't break bread with, the people of their communities, and I think there's a lot of that disconnect. It's the same thing when you see policing in communities and things like that. You know what I mean? Like the police communities do not live in those communities, so they have no connection to those communities, so they have no reason to protect those communities, right? And I think that same sort of logic can be applied to these people. Like you said, these are global people, these are globalistic people, right? They are Americans in the sense that is where they were born, and that's probably where they do most of their business. But they're not your what you would call salt of the earth Americans, right? They're not the blue collar that are working, fucking farming jobs in the Midwest. You know what I mean? These are people that they don't care whether or not America fails or doesn't fail, because they have enough ungodly amounts of money that they'll just go to their villa in France and it doesn't fucking matter, right? So do they have the best interests of America and whole at heart? Probably not. They have the best interests of themselves and their family, and creating generational wealth and consolidating power.
No, and I was just going to say, if you look at that present bill, the big beautiful bill that the Democrats got renamed because they didn't like calling it the big beautiful bill. That's all they could do was rename it. It still passed, right? But you're giving massive tax breaks, or extending tax breaks that were already there, because Biden, like an asshole, didn't actually, get rid of them when he should have. Because once you have these tax breaks, they stay. People get used to and accustomed to these tax breaks, and they've lobbied and spent lots of money to get these tax breaks. So you have these super wealthy people getting tax breaks, where the super poor, no matter how much tax break you might have thrown in there just to make it look like something, are losing their health care. They're losing everything else around them. The safety net is being ripped away at the same time as automation and is taking jobs, and tariffs is slowly, if they ever take effect, which is also kind of hilarious that they haven't been able, for all the talk about tariffs, it's you know, he's never going to get what he wants. And some of these countries are standing up to him, which I also think is pretty cool. Like the Bolsonaro thing down in, you know, like, I'm going to tariff you because you've got another fascist oligarch behind bars for doing what I was doing, and somehow our system is so slow and so bureaucratic. I mean, he's right. The systems are fucked, but they've worked in his favor. So,
you know, the
you know,
very real, but on the surface conspiratorial looking aspect of this whole elite relationship is the extreme collaboration and intertwining of wealth and legislative power. Okay, in the United States, people might not know. I do not know any senator that's not a millionaire. I just don't. And of course, there are 400 or 550 representatives, both in House and the Senate. We might be able to find some representatives out of the 400 that might be on lower million or high hundreds of thousands, but none of the representatives that represent the people of the United States, as much as I can tell, are considered working class or poor. Okay. Now, the thing is, this group of economic and political elite, since Reagan's time and probably before that, created a global system that you are absolutely right. They don't care if they are in, I don't know, a penthouse in Manhattan or a penthouse in Dubai or a penthouse in Tokyo or a penthouse in London. For them, it is all the same because they don't have to deal with people that don't look like them wherever they go. And that's another thing that it is really, for me, you can see it as a globally happening thing. Is I was actually gonna ask, because you all know more about music in England, as a result of the genocide that's happening in Gaza by the Israelis against Palestinians. A lot of people in Britain started to protest, and there was a group called Palestine Action Committee that has been there for a long time. They just haphazard, they just out of, you know, their liking, declared it a terrorist organization. And if now you support Palestine Action in UK, you can go to prison for 14 motherfucking years by being accused of being a terrorist. And you know, that's why I like people like Bob Villain and Kneecap that I wanted to ask you about, because the elites as a result of a capitalist system created a global system that is benefiting them globally, and it is leaving the rest of us behind. And now I wonder, what do you think will happen? Because this is really getting to the point that I'm waiting for the pitchforks to come out and people start to drag, because I don't know how many different places you can go, but at the end of the day, wherever you go, there's a possibility of, you know, being dragged out in the house. Or maybe I'm too optimistic about eating the rich, and that's not going to happen.
Well, and truth is, before we go into the discussion of the what's going on with the Palestine thing, I would like to make a point on our last subject, which is, you know, one of the biggest causes for this situation we're in now is the allowing of money into politics, like lobbyists. You know, in China, it would be absolutely insane if someone, when they say that the corporations of America have actually influenced the politics of America. That's mind blowing, because in China, the government dictates. They actually determine how corporations work, and if they don't want to follow the law, then they go to prison. So the idea that money in politics, lobbyists, like you were talking about all the senators and congressmen who make this money, right? The House of Representatives and the Senate, the senators, they don't actually get paid a lot of money on the clock. Like the government, their pay is decent, but it's not a lot of money, right? And because they usually only work so many months of the year, and they only do this, you know, and they're always back in their constituents and stuff like that, and there's expense of doing what they do. But the money comes from the other sources. The reason they all have this wealth is not because the government pays them that much money or any state pays those state representatives any money. Once we let lobbyists in and we legalize that funnel of money from the private corporations into the pockets of the politicians, game over. We didn't need the Supreme Court to tell us that corporations were people. I already knew that. They have way more power than I do. So and on that fact, I mean, if we were going to stick, we can move on to the other subject if we want to. But I was also kind of interested in.
No, I like this one. Let's finish this.
if why don't we come back to that later? Because we're still running early, and let Nasty, if you don't mind, kind of like if I know you know more about like this progression of money in politics, or at least you have a better framework of like the history of it, but like the lobbyists being paid, this creation of the super wealthy, the shareholder economy has happened over the last
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, so I mean this goes back, way back. I mean shit, you can go back to the famous speech of Eisenhower after World War II, warning of the military industrial complex, taking over and influencing American politics, and that's sort of the genesis of this problem, right? There's always been money in politics, obviously, we know that, right? But we have this idea also of certain things were put in place even in ancient democratic systems that prevented these sort of things. In ancient Greece, every citizen was required to serve in the Senate at some point during your lifetime, right? Everyone, every citizen, not just the super elite, not just the super wealthy, not just the lawyers. You look at Texas, look at if you're a state legislator or a state senator in the state of Texas, the pay is like $7,000 a year. So who is going to be the people that become those people? They're the people who already have wealth, who already have money, right? It's not going to be the farmer who's just trying to get better laws for his farm and his farm buddies, right? Because he can't afford to do it because he's got a farm to feed his family. $7,000 a year isn't going to do it. So there's that money aspect, right? Currently, federal United States senators and state representatives are paid what we would consider, well, anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 a year. Again, that's not multi-millionaire money. So like you said, where does that money come from? Well, that money comes from lobbyism, and lobbyism is something that is always going to be ingrained in our politics until we pass laws that prevent it. Lobbying can be from anything from beef to fucking nuclear weapons. You know what I mean? It runs the entire gamut. It runs everything. What do most of these people do after they are senators, after they are U.S. House of Representatives? If they do leave, they become lobbyists. They become consultants. They become whatever, It also allowed us to start putting hundreds of millions of dollars into super PACs. The Citizens United was a Supreme Court decision that allowed for the formation of PACs, political action committees, political action groups that people can put money into that will back people that are running for state, all the way from local all the way up to federal, right? They run the entire gamut. And we can spend hundreds of millions of dollars and put them into these PACs. And these PACs they're not going to give these candidates hundreds of millions of dollars if they don't have an agenda that they want to be on the docket with that candidate. So bought and paid for, right? The politics are already bought and paid for. The agenda is already bought and paid for. It's all influenced by the lobbyists behind the money, right? All of the agenda is going to be for that. It's all going to be geared towards that, right? So if you look at like Project 2025, stuff like that, all of these groups that, that not that Project 2025 itself is a PAC, but there's all these little innocuous groups that'll always be called something very like, the Center for American Progress. They'll always be like named something like that. That doesn't sound threatening or anything, but in actuality, what they're doing is they're funneling hundreds of millions of dollars from local politicians all the way up to federal politicians to fund either whatever their agenda is, right? Anti-abortion, anti-immigration, whatever it is. So this is the way that politics are done in America.
What I wanted to mention, at least to my fellow Iranians or middle or people who don't live in the U.S., is what we're talking about is the mix of money and lobbying, because theoretically, in spirit, citizens should have the right to lobby their government in order to convince the government to do whatever the citizens want. What are we arguing is the enormous, unending, dark, unknowable, unrecognizable, uncontrollable infusion of money into this lobbying, where citizens cannot lobby their government anymore. And it is just the elite, the corporation, the wealthy, and those who have the money to lobby. I just wanted to make sure people don't think like we're against lobbying. Lobbying, if it's done correctly, as if it was, as much as I have my problem with the founders, they were thinking about probably the ability, because in the king, I think, in the old England, you couldn't lobby. Am I right? I don't know. Maybe that's why the reason they came up for it with a petition. Okay.
You could petition the court.
Okay.
You could ask for audience. You could petition the court. You could do things like that, right? It's the same idea. And yes, absolutely. Like, how are you going to be able to air your grievances? How are you going to, as a constituency, going to be able to put forth whatever your expectations are if you don't lobby, right? So you do have to have some level of interaction with your politicians. That's not what we're talking about, though. We're not talking about like going down and being like, I can't sell my corn down at the market because the taxes on the such and such. That is what lobby, that's what it is originally intended for. But now it's ballooned and transformed into this monster that is, influencing everything, everything.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, how many phone calls add up enough to be worth losing $1 million? So, like, why, like, that's the thing is, that's when people say their vote doesn't count, it really doesn't count anymore. And that's the crazy thing, because Trump runs on this anti-bureaucracy and anti-government thing, and everybody's so distracted by this anti-bureaucracy, anti-government thing, which there's a lot of problems with all these systems. We've talked about this several times. A lot of what Trump says is wrong, in a lot of ways is wrong. How he deals with it is just twice as bad as it was beforehand. You can destroy the government and bureaucracy. That really means we are an oligarchy, because that's the only thing saving us from being an oligarchy. I mean, our government is bought and sold by the rich and by corporations, but that's only in truth. The face looks like democracy. Once this takes place, the face becomes, he's the king, right? It's an oligarchy. They run the system, and if they don't need you, you can die, you can pass away, you can starve to death. I mean, once again, we could bring that full circle to Palestine, because I mean, in this country, we're so privileged that even the middle class and the upper lower class don't have to see how bad it looks to be poor in this country. Yet, to be honest, at the same time, being poor in this country is still being wealthy in a lot of other countries. We have an obesity rate in poverty that probably no other country in the world has. So there's that. But
We're one of the only countries where you'll see fat homeless people for sure. Yeah.
well, even and I want to bring this. I hate to interrupt you, but bring it back to one of our little what we started with. Even that, and you as a geography teacher. My daughter was talking the other day, like the level of education in this country is so low in very specific areas that should be more important to us. We're so isolationist, whether or not we believe this or not. We're absolutely an isolationist country. We don't see any other media than our own media. We don't think about people outside of our own country. To the point where, like, even my daughter, who, went to a decent school and got a reasonably good American education, can admit the fact that she didn't realize how big America was and how small the entire, European Union put together is. Like our smart students, our students who are doing reasonably well in our education system have never had someone show them the lifelike size of America with Russia superimposed, or China superimposed so they can actually see like what it even looks like size wise? Because most kids don't even know how big this country is. I mean, how many kids? I mean, like I'm one of those rare ones. I think a couple of us here have driven across this country several times in many different directions. I know how big this country is, how vast and how empty a lot of it is. And some of it's just empty. Just nothing. Nothing.
There's still places in this country that are lawless. There's still places in the Appalachia in the South where, like, it's not really what you would call like civilization. You know what I mean? It's
You talking holler justice? Little holler
yeah,
justice?
that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking West Virginia. I'm talking, you know what I mean, where you'll just disappear. You know,
What's that movie? Squeal Like a Pig?
make it yeah deliverance.
Honestly, people really don't realize that is very true. Not only they don't realize how vast the country is, they also don't realize how wealthy we are because it is really not in the hands of everybody. I recommend people go and look at the current United States cabinet and look at the cabinet members, who they are. And you will see out of, I don't know how many there are, but I think there are like 15, 20. I think one or two of them were not either born into extremely wealthy family or are not billionaires. The rest are wealthy. They're either born into wealthy families. And that's why I was talking to some people about how the United States government has given 380 billion with B dollars in handout to the government of Israel. Our children are undereducated and hungry. Our infrastructure is falling apart. There is no such thing as health care to talk about. It is whatever you can get your hands on, urgent care, emergency room, dying quickly. But people in other countries like Israel getting free health care and education. And it is really hard to fathom and swallow that as an American. And it's not just Israel. We give 300, $200 billion to Egypt. And my question is, why? Why are we doing that? I think you mentioned it very correctly, Nasli, and that is the connection between wealth and legislation, which when it comes to industry, we call it here industrial complex. I was reading how much Boeing is charging for 2,000-pound bombs. These are bombs that would level an entire city block in a second. The United States government has ordered 200,000 of these bombs. 200,000 2,000-pound bombs. I don't know what you can do with 200,000 bombs, but I know you can't lower your cholesterol. You can't get a master's degree with it. You can't become healthy or wealthy. It is just for one purpose and one purpose only. And that is really, really hard to swallow. So
And the crazy thing is, the purpose isn't to kill people or destroy anything. It's to make wealthy people more wealthy. Like that, the death and the other stuff are just side. If it has to happen, if someone wants to get all uppity and shit, or if another country we support, like Israel, decides to do shit in another country's and just blow people up and kill people, we might just send stealth bombers or something. I mean, but that's not what they're there for. They're there to make money. I mean, we have enough nuclear weapons to destroy the planet multiple times over. That's the thing is, you look at that tax bill. That's the crazy thing is, the amount of spending going towards the military in peace times and the border when all we're doing is building prisons for every immigrant in the country, which is just going to tank our economy because there's not going to be anybody to do these jobs. It's insane. We're spending trillions of dollars to destroy our own economy.
yeah, I remember, Nasty, you were talking about what this called, the concentration camp in Florida?
Alligator Alcatraz. Yeah, I mean, they built this thing in 8 fucking days, and they were like, fucking look at this bitch, man, wheels will never fall off of this, and it flooded immediately after they built it because it was probably built by the lowest fucking bidder, of course. And it's short side. It's theater. It's just theater. Look at what we're doing. Look at what we're doing to satisfy the mandate, right? That Donald Trump has put forth, right? It's all optics. It's not actually real. It's not a functional.
It's all distraction. I mean, look at what is. First of all, for those who don't know, Trump yesterday took the United States out of the United Nations UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Cultural, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. So they accused the UNESCO, like Donald Trump and his buddies accused UNESCO of being a globalist system. And it is, as you mentioned, Jeremiah, it is all about distraction because look at what's happening with the Washington team. Now he's picking a fight with Washington Nationals or whatever they call themselves to bring the old stupid racist name back as if it has anything to do with anything we do in our lives. It's like
This is funny. This is funny how this works out because we talk. I mean, I've talked with y'all before about how during my present job I listen to a lot of sports talk, which I don't even give a fuck about sports. But I've always followed it a little bit because I'm an American, and that's just kind of what you do if you're raised with a dad who watches sports, right? So like, even though I don't care, I still keep up with it. It's like it's brainless, stupid shit. But there was a sports talk guy that was just talking about that. It's kind of funny because it actually came onto the sports talk where he's just like, "What happened to Greenland? What happened to Canada? Is anybody talking about Greenland anymore? Anybody talking about Canada anymore?" That was pretty cool because out of all the stuff I've listened to over weeks and weeks and hours of that drivel, that was the first time any single host said something. I was like, "That's pretty good. You actually did pretty good on that one."
Yeah, it's the let's talk about anything other than Epstein. That's what the game that he's playing right now. Let's talk about anything other than Epstein. Let's talk about the Nationals. Let's talk about the Redskins. Let's talk about the he's even going after
JFK,
the
Luther King.
yeah, like let's do anything, right? Let's do that. Like motherfucker's gonna start pulling out the big guns, you know what I mean? He's gonna start declassifying some crazy shit from back in the day just to get people talking about something. He's gonna be like the aliens, motherfucker. Here's all the alien files. I'm gonna drop all that. Please don't talk about Epstein anymore, and keep talking about it.
But here's the craziest thing. I mean, we were already tribal before all of this really hit the fan, to the point where there was this whole period, right, where there's this pizza joint where the Democrats are, supposedly like, running children, and none of that's fact. But then the Epstein thing comes up, and the truth of the matter is, I'm pretty sure Trump's on the list, but I bet you Clinton's on there too. So this is not, once again, this doesn't actually have anything to do between Republican or Democrat. Every name on that list is a member of the super wealthy who has fucked up fetishes and has the ability to do whatever the fuck they want to. They can go to some goddamn island and have a bunch of immigrant, probably Slovenian or Slovakian or some like, European countries, beautiful young women.
And you know what? Like, I'm a cynic, but I have a feeling that a lot of people in this country would vote for Donald Trump even if they knew he was on the fucking list.
I mean, we have been told so many times that what? Don't compare him to the Almighty, compare him to the other guy, or we're not picking the Pope, we're picking a president or whatever, or altar boy. And
He's not perfect, right? Like, I mean, I honestly think that even if it came out that I still think people would vote for him.
Hey, he grabbed that one broad in the pussy. So, I mean, once you got away with grabbing that one broad in the pussy, because that's what he
I
said.
mean, I think people, even if people knew for a fact that he was on the list beforehand, there are some people in this country that still would have voted for him.
yeah, yeah.
No, the thing is, if he can find a way to run a third term without like having his brain completely melt, because he is kind of looking a Biden-esque in some ways when you listen to him. He's just really good at playing the part. So you have like a guy with Alzheimer's who's actually, because he's been so scripted, it's muscle memory. And he knows he can say whatever the fuck he wants. He's proven that. He can say literally anything he wants. And for some reason, people are so angry at our political system without being educated enough to actually know that he's destroying the good parts of it. Like, we're so fed with our consumerism and our capitalism and our privilege in this country that we have no idea what it's going to look like when this shit hits the fan. If we continue down this road, and the Republicans just continue to kowtow to his freaking authoritarian, whatever it is. I mean, I don't know. You put me in a room with him, I don't think I'm going to be impressed. If he's a genius savant in the weirdest, fucked up, most anti-American ways that have ever existed. Usually I'm like, okay, there's good Americans, there's bad Americans, there's a spectrum, but I accept them all. This one, we can deport him. Wherever his family comes from. Wherever his family comes from. And actually, let's just pick a worse place and just drop him. Let's just take him like some really bad South African, you know, genocide-stricken country and just drop his little white naked ass and let them have.
I still think we need to dose all these motherfuckers with high levels of fucking hallucinogens and drop them out in the desert by themselves, and they can figure it out. We drop Bibi, we drop fucking Trump, all of his boys, the whole fucking squad. They all fucking take like life-altering, heroic doses. You know Terrence McKenna's idea of taking the heroic dose.
No, mommy's.
They see the face of Jesus.
Yes, no, mommy's.
Oh, it's the dedicated dosage. If it doesn't scare you, it's not a dedicated dosage. And you know, some of us who like our hallucinogenics can tell you a dedicated dose can get pretty fucking stupid. It can get pretty extreme. So yeah, that's dedicated.
I mean, it is something that is really benefiting them so much that, and at this point, it is a matter of kind of daring the public. Because I was telling Nasty about, I watched this video on YouTube where Mehdi Hassan, a journalist that it is progressive, I mean, by all account, I will say he's progressive, is debating 20 extremely far-right conservative people, and many of them say, like, they look the guy in the eye and say, I don't care for the Constitution. I am a white Catholic nationalist. I am a nationalist. Why would I care for the Constitution? And the guy is like, are you American? He's like, yeah, I am an American. He's like, well, what about the Constitution? And it comes back to the idea of, out of 320 million people that live in this country, I will bet top dollar that less than, I don't want it to be crazy, but less than 1,000, less than 10,000 have actually read the Federalist paper. Not the Constitution. Constitution is not hard to read. It's like a few here and there. But the Federalist papers, the ones that the founders would go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, is where you see where America, at least in idea, was supposed to look like, and all the Enlightenment philosophy and all that. No, none of that matters anymore. As you mentioned, lack of education, the tribalism.
And you know, it's my pet peeve. So maybe that's funny because that was supposed to be our transition between two topics anyway, was the pet peeve of the month. But it's always my pet peeve. It's been my pet peeve since I was in middle school. But the education system in this country, which now is going to be completely fucked, and if you can afford a good one and you want to indoctrinate your children with some crazy metaphysics, you can do it now, and the government's behind it, which is nuts. Because we're already in this situation because of the education system in this country. You know, like I said, I mean, as an educator who's worked in classrooms and seen, and from that, my own child's perspective of having to come home and me tutoring because her teacher doesn't give a fuck and she goes to a good school. There's probably more teachers that give a fuck in the inner cities than there are in the suburbs. And they know because the only way they're going to get these kids to succeed is if they get a chip on their shoulder and they get ahead of the game and they work twice as hard. Whereas the other ones are like, these kids are fine. They're spoiled little white kids. They'll be okay. And, you know, we nobody in this country actually, very few, and especially very few of these people opening their mouths on the internet or on major networks, seems to have an actual true understanding of the history of this country and the things it's done and the actions we've taken and the horrible, I mean, my taxpayer dollars pay for that. The fact that we're worried about some of this little petty shit and that we're letting this guy run the country and the oligarchs run the country because we have no voice, because none of us can unite, because we're all tired, because we're overworked and underpaid and the cost of living's fucking through the roof. Doesn't that seem, I mean, like, it wasn't like that. Go back 50 years, it wasn't like that. What's happened? What has made life so unbearable in this country? It has nothing to do with the Democrats or the Republicans. It has nothing to do with sex offenders. It has to do with really wealthy people squeezing the fuck out of this country, having control of the politics, and somehow bequeathing Trump like the fucking golden something, because it was perfect timing for him to be able to come in and do what he does and say absolute stupid ape shit fucking crazy shit, and then just go okay, that's fine, because
And that's why the Epstein thing is important, because it's not it is about people having sex with kids, but more than that, it's about fucking comeuppance for the people that we have wanted comeuppance for a long fucking time. Comeuppance is people getting their just dues, right? Like getting what they fucking deserve. And when you hear about a group of people who are doing the most fucking egregious things that you could possibly think of, fucking kids, and then not being that's why it's important. It's not about the it's not it, it's about the people who are fucking involved in it. And if we do not get fucking justice for that, then I mean, and we never will. That's the problem, guys. I'm I don't think we ever will ever see that list, and if we ever do, it's going to be it's going to be the most redacted thing that you have ever seen. It's going to be because well, and here's another thing too. There's a theory that's been floating out there that Epstein was an Israeli asset, and that the reason that this shit is because the people who have these lists are not just the United States. It's also other countries, and it's going to be mutually assured destruction, right? That it's not just Americans on that list. It's people from all over the fucking world, right? And so, I mean, if you look at what fucking happened, look at that sweetheart deal that Epstein got. You know what I mean? That kept that I mean the word on the street, the rumor is that basically it came out that they found out he was an Israeli asset, and they slapped his ass on the fucking wrist and sent him on his way.
I'm glad you mentioned that because one, as you mentioned, Jeremiah, it was not necessarily poor and immigrant kids from Europe. It was actually single parent home girls that were living in trailer parks in Florida, where the girl was. I was listening to this incredibly painful interview with one, not interview, when the police actually, it's a police testimony. They're asking the poor woman about what happened. She was like, I didn't have a home to go to. It was a trailer park. I had a single parent. We didn't have any money. Of course, when the guy says $200 for a massage, yeah, of course. And then, when it gets to, but also in that sense that when it became clear that I think at some point somebody gave the idea that we are dealing with intelligence services, because the prosecutor who originally prosecuted him, his name is Barry Krishner, state attorney of state of Florida. Okay, this guy is a state attorney. He's an elected official. You know what he charged him for? Instead of child abuse, prostitution. He turned 12-year-old kids who come from broken homes and have no other choice into prostitutes, and reduced the term and got him away. And I'm not gonna say that Kirshner guy is himself is part of the Mossad thing, but hey, what do I know?
I don't know about the Mossad. I don't know about the state of Israel. But if there's one thing I actually do know about, it is the state of Florida.
Amen.
Sounds like an average Friday night in the state of Florida. There's got to be some. Give me some cocaine. Give me some court. Some good judges. Maybe a couple state troopers. Maybe even a federal marshal. And let's have some fun. Cause you don't never know what's gonna happen in that state. We do all kinds of fucking shit. Shit I saw before I was 12. Shit. Damn. Alligator, Alcatraz. Shit. That sounds like home. That sounds like where I live. I mean, no. I mean, that's the thing is that none of that surprises me that in the state of Florida is involved in any of this, because the amount of shit that takes place in that state every day. And I'll be honest. I mean, we go back a long ways.
Have you been to Palm Beach? Have you been to this Palm Beach place they're talking about? Because they're saying like it is out of this world or whatever. I've never been.
Oh, no. You still okay. You haven't read the last chapter, and so you've actually missed the fact that I used to, and we do this in the way we do this, but take massive amounts of hallucinogenics and smoke a whole bunch of illegal marijuana. I've run all over that golf course. I've been on the roof of Mar-a-Lago. I've been on the roof. There's a church of Bethesda. I've gotten busy with some booty on the top of the church of Bethesda.
Close to God by many hundreds of feet.
The heresy that has taken place on top of the church of Bethesda that I have personally been involved in, I'm very proud of, and I feel like mission accomplished.
This is where we say hallelujah, amen, thank you, black baby Jesus.
That is Florida. That is God's chosen land.
But yes, no. So I know Palm Beach. I know Palm Beach. I definitely know Palm Beach, and that it's always been that way. There's some like there's a really cool little art area in that particular island that you will see. Like I saw paintings by Miles Davis during one of his last runs, or after he had died, they did a run. I've seen some of those beautiful art and some of those precious stuff, but everything in the place, right? Like everything on Palm Beach Island. That's why we went over there. The heresy really wasn't against God. The heresy was against the wealthy. I mean, we did some damned up, fucked up shit to some wealthy shit, and we got away with it because cops are idiots too. And if you're just doing it to have fun and you're not actually trying to do anything to like make money off of it, I mean, everything I did on Palm Beach Island was really just to, piss on rich people. Because you go across, if you go to West Palm Beach, just across the bridge, and go to some of the neighborhoods right around downtown West Palm Beach, that is the massive, that's where the poverty's at. So like you have, if one side of the bridge is pimps, hookers, crack dealers, and crime, which is, generational and redlined and purposeful, but you cross the bridge, them motherfuckers are living, dude. That shit's pimp. So when you 19 years old and don't give a
Like one of the wealthiest zip codes.
yeah. When you're 19 years old and from the bad neighborhoods, but also white, which I will say, because you couldn't get away with the shit I got away with. If you were a colored man, they probably would have shot me in the back or something like that. But the ability to get away with some heinous shit on Palm Beach Island just for the fuck of it was well worth it, because it really was. It was, we talk about that. When you have wealth and poverty so close to each other, these are the towns: Houston, Fort Lauderdale. There's certain towns in this country. Now the whole country is getting this way because they just made the problem expand. It used to be, like I used to say that, like I go from one town to another and I could tell you which ones had the largest difference between wealthy and poverty. Because those are not good places to be. There's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of crime, but there's also Lamborghinis driving down the street. It's really like real weird, like Max Headroom futuristic TV kind of shit, But now that's just spread because that the property values, wealthy people have found every way to take every cent. There's nothing left. It's making it just impossible.
Legally, right?
Legally, you can't even fight this in court. No, like that's the thing is the lack of regulation, and now it was already bad before Trump, but then you let Trump get into power, and this idea of like let business do what business does. But when has business done anything for the population? Like, give me an example. Nasty, you got one for me? You got me a nugget of when ever in the history of business?
Look, the only time really that look, business, capitalism, I'm sorry, but I will always be pro-capitalist versus pro-socialist because socialism just is a broken system that's never worked. And but
Anyway, it's never been allowed to work, and then it's been also twisted just like capital. So the problem is it's not really capitalism, it's socialism.
it's late stage. It's more
It's
right.
certain groups of people being able to control how these things develop, because capitalism today is not laissez-faire, original. This is corporate freaking shareholder based. This is not the capitalism. This is not the capitalism that works.
No, and I agree with you there. I agree with you. I'm just saying ideologically, broadly
But
speaking,
socialism has never really had an example of the one that works either. But that's the thing is these economic systems once
that's what I'm saying is we don't have very good examples.
but once property has value, people own shit. You can exclude other people.
Correct.
And if you give anybody wealth, I'm sorry, it's the one thing we've proved. Like we were talking about that. If you become super wealthy, there are very rare examples of anybody who came from poverty that goes to super wealth that over time, if they live long enough, doesn't just become another member of that group of individuals. There's rare examples.
I will say that some of the only times that we've had seen sort of large shifts in industrial moves was like when it was like backed by the U.S. government, let's say like New Deal, WPA, the works programs that were put into implementation, but those are honestly those are socialism is what they are, right? Those are
But though, hey, here's the other thing: is those were actually backed by the big businesses at the time. Like we had this whole conversation back in the day. Those were backed by big businesses
correct, yeah, but they were under the purview of the federal government, right?
because they couldn't use employees. The back in the day, that's the one thing people aren't getting. Why is the social safety net now being stripped away? I had a conversation with the grad student Constantine that our one friend introduced us to, who's now a professor somewhere. You know, the social safety net was actually put in place because the businesses wanted it put in place. They actually supported it in the sense that I need workers because when these workers get hurt or these workers pass away or we're going to build this business and make all this money, I need this resource of workers. Because of AI, because of automation, because of offshoring, all of which has been allowed by this government, which has been voted on by our senators and our House of Representatives,
Has been encouraged by our government, encouraged.
have been encouraged ever since probably before Reagan, but Reagan definitely exacerbated the entire issue. It's all been offshore. And so there's what industry is left other we have the information industry and that's it, and that's not going to supply enough jobs for everybody,
Service will be the only thing that's left.
and they're even getting rid of that. I mean, the middle class jobs that are going to go away because of AI. So now the truth is now the wealthy really do not need any of us. I mean, every one of us has a decent education, has a huge talent, and are resourceful individuals who could be running our own companies if we wanted to. But the avenues for any kind of growth at this point are just evaporating, if they haven't already completely evaporated. It is becoming a country of wealthy and poor, and somehow they've convinced the poor of a certain category, especially these white kind of, rural area, who he's punishing, which is crazy. So we'll see what happens. I don't know, but I tell you, I have no faith in this country. I have had no faith in this country for a very long time. The voting population, the percentage of it being small, and then the education of the ones that do, and their partisanship and their actual reasons for voting, their idealism instead of their rationality. I'm not hopeful. I'm not hopeful that it's going to get any better, no matter how fucked up he makes it. We could all be broken back in a new Great Depression, but we could go to war.
Especially when our voting base is uneducated, right? Like what's the point, right? Like if you've got a bunch of like, sorry, but a bunch of fucking retards voting, like I don't know. I'm taking that word back, guys. That's my word.
No. Here's the deal. You're allowed to take it back, but I like that word personally. I think ID.
I love that word. I love retards, and I'm gonna use fucking retards all the time. Okay?
Intellectually so as a high school teacher, they changed. You were not allowed to call a kid a retard.
I think retard is one of.
I love it. It's great. It's a great word, and the visualization I always get is perfect.
Fucking retard is like the perfect insult, and I will never stop saying retard. But when you have a retarded voting base, right? Like, what are you gonna get? You know what I mean? Like you said, you get people who vote via ideology. They don't vote via like actual like nuts and bolts, like what is going to get done. People used to be intelligent, and they used to be they used to be intelligent enough to realize that politicians were always lying to them. You know what I mean? Like that's what I was always taught being raised, was that every politician lies to you all the time. That's their job. That's what they're going to do. You never trust politics. People are too fucking stupid nowadays to realize that. You know what I mean? Why do people still believe it? Why do people believe it? You know?
Well, okay, so but it always comes back. But here it always comes back. At least this is how it worked before Trump, which is no matter what they voted on nationally, they always made sure to bring back benefits to their local constituents. So as long as you're scratching my back and you're getting the highway built and you're getting this area redistricted and you're bringing money in from the federal government to, do this or do that, most of the, all of that, because what they see is what they see. That's the problem. Is we're a huge country. Like the fact is, like we talk about lack of education. Very few people in this country, or young people in this country, have any idea what life in another country looks like. Any country, whether it's Canada or China or Bangladesh, right? It just doesn't happen. Someone from Kentucky really has no idea what it looks like to be in LA. And someone in LA has no idea what it looks like to live in Alabama. And people that move around in this country tend to have more of an understanding of that, and we have become a more mobile country. But the percentage of people who just stuck where they're stuck, because especially now it's too expensive to try to move unless you make good money. I mean, that's the other thing, is we're going to restrict movement. We're completely restricting movement around this country. The cost of a hotel room, the lack of ability to freely just park and sleep on the side of the road, everything's becoming impossible. So we don't need these people anymore. We're going to make it impossible. When they're done rounding up the immigrants, are the homeless next? Because that's my question. Like I love immigrants, and I think we're an immigrant country, and we need these people. But even beyond that, like Run the Jewels says, like when they're done with the gas chambers with the others, who they coming for next?
They're just getting them all hooked on fucking fentanyl anyway, man. Like they're just turning them all into fucking addicts, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's a perfect fucking cocktail for people, the homelessness and hopeless fucking opiate addiction and like we got fucking huge problems in this country and we need to start there. We need to start fucking there. We need to start with our people. We need to start with Americans. And I'm not saying that as some like America first, hyper patriotic, blah blah blah, but like bitch, don't spend another fucking dollar in any country, in Israel, in any other, I don't care where. Stop sending it anywhere. You want to send all that, stop the US aid. I don't give a fuck. Angola can figure out their own AIDS crisis. Fucking, I'm sorry, but like we got to fucking figure out our shit here. I'm not saying that we turn a blind eye to the fucking world and what's going on, you know what I mean? But like when we're not investing in ourselves, we're not investing in the infrastructure in this country.
But here's a good, like we could do this as our closing argument because we're definitely at that point. But we're spending all this money on military. We could take half the money we spend on military and fund every fucking system that we just defunded and still have tons of money left over. So I'm with you for the reasoning behind why you're against that stuff. I get, but there's no need to get rid of that stuff, because if we can cure Ebola in Africa, then we'll never have to deal with it in this country. Because if that shit hits the streets, the way we're overpopulated and overcondensed in our living areas, like we talk about how COVID was bad. It was bad. It'd be 10 times worse than that. That was actually, we dodged a fucking bullet on that motherfucker. So if we defund all of these aid organizations that are actually trying to help against rebel wars and viruses and health crises, like we shouldn't be supporting bombs in Israel that kill innocent Palestinians. We should have a morality to how we spend our money outside of supporting the only people we have in that area who are white like us. Allegedly, but they're not. They're Hasidic. They're not even the same, they're not even the same lineage, but whatever. All of that is bullshit because we're all people. And we're just separating it by government and politics and by religion, when really all of us should be working together. All it does, all of this division does, was allow the wealthy and the powerful to do whatever the fuck they want to do. And parents are too overworked to educate their children themselves, or too uneducated themselves, and then they're uneducated and unwilling to educate themselves, or they don't have time. It just becomes, we're just so overwhelmed on an average daily basis, and have been for a very long time. And they're just, and the funny thing is, I love, we're doing a podcast, right? But the amount of stuff hitting people's brains every day that is pointless and has nothing to do with anything, or is a distraction, or is a lie. It's going to be very difficult to get people to sign on to actual change. It's not a good picture. It's not a good picture.
Change is not easy, and as you mentioned, the struggle is between those in power trying to divide and conquer the rest of the population. The best way to do that is to have a uneducated population that it is incapable of critical thinking. Let the record show that I am not a big fan of R word, but I am not also a free speech police at the same time. You're right. It is the ability, taking the ability for critical thinking away from people by having not a proper education. And then, as you mentioned, extreme emphasis on being entertainer or wealthy or whatever it is besides being an educated and critically thinking citizen. Being a citizen has been lost. All of us are either, as you mentioned, hungry, or we are workers, or we are, struggling. It is hard to be a citizen in a country, in a place that does not educate people to become citizens. Where did civics go? Why are we legislating or governing through judiciary instead of legislation and instead of educating people? It is interesting that you mentioned the whole New Deal and all that stuff. I was reading how, again, it was a matter of industry because it came out of the roaring 20s and the whole crash of wealthy people really crashing the world economy. At the end of the day, it wasn't really that much different than that. So I really think that is a very important thing to talk about, the difference in...
It also directly led to the start of World War II. Had it not happened, we would not have had World War II. So.
That little event that happened as a result is also part of it. Every week, y'all, we're going to do this. I hope we can see more people. And for now, this has been Heretics to Hegemony.